Hello, everyone. It's your boy Kosani. Welcome back. Let's talk little bit about drug prices. The United States House of Representatives just passed a bill that caps the price of insulin to $35 a month if you have insurance. And we all know that the price of drugs in this country is absolutely ridiculous. Now, not every representative voted for this measure. In fact, many voted against it. One particular representative, Matt Gaetz of Florida, voted against it, and he explained why. Let's see why. Let's do our research. We'll take a look at the facts, and then I will give you my perspective as a registered nurse in this country.
Here's what his newsletter said specifically verbatim. While Democrat posturing of H.R. 6833 victimizes insulin payees as people with an uncontrollable disease that are being taken advantage of and need Big Brother to throw them a raft, lifestyle changes en masse would expeditiously lower demand and the subsequent prices of insulin. 90 to 95% of people with diabetes have type 2 diabetes, which can be prevented or delayed with healthy lifestyle changes, such as losing weight, eating healthy food, and being active. Now, of course, he noted a statistic there, 90 to 95%. Notably, there was no evidence for that statistic whatsoever.
That comes from the CDC. It is true. It takes 6 seconds of research to find out.
But I just want to be clear, there are many people who have diabetes who did not make lifestyle decisions to have it, meaning it's not related to obesity, it's not related to their inactivity or lack of exercise. I have a family member who has diabetes as a result of medication she is forced to take as a result of a different condition, which has nothing to do with her lifestyle choices. So many Americans deal with the same
Anecdotal
thing.
but relevant.
And by the way, even if 100% of Americans were dealing with 100% of Americans with diabetes were suffering from it as a result of obesity, who the hell is Matt Gaetz to tell them, no, pharmaceutical companies get to price gouge you as much as they want? And as we know, this is really just price gouging. There was a giant story about Senator Joe Manchin's daughter when she was the CEO of Mylan Pharmaceuticals. She struck a deal with Pfizer to prevent them from putting out a generic version of the EpiPen. And the reason why she did that was to ensure that the EpiPen would be monopolized and she could charge whatever she wanted for it. And then she agreed to share some of those profits with Pfizer, essentially breaking all sorts of antitrust laws, which...
So, I mean, we'll just screw the people. We'll screw people who are allergic to things, and we'll just make a bunch of money.
She was never held accountable for because her father happens to be one of the worst U.S. senators of all time. But he also says in his newsletter, arbitrary price controls are no substitute for individual weight control. Since 2000, the number of diabetes cases in the United States has nearly doubled. The demand for insulin has increased, and the requisite price increases has followed suit. In other words, the price of insulin increases as waistlines increase. And, strong words for Matt Gaetz. I wish the media actually cared about this story and covered it more. Because
that would be nice. Okay, so what he's saying is the price of insulin has raised because people's weight has increased, which, we got to make more insulin, it's going to cost more. And if we just lose weight, it'll make all those problems go away. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at some facts here. The CDC, I just looked up some brief stuff about obesity. So in the last 20-ish years, the obesity rate increased by about 11.5%. Same time, severe obesity doubled, which is not bad. I mean, it's true. We are an overweight nation, and it's true that we should all try to get closer to a healthy weight because there are so many conditions that are tied to unhealthy weight. All right, it's true. Talking about diabetes in particular, they're saying about over 1 in 10 Americans have it. We're talking about something close to 40 million Americans. And then it gives a racial breakdown here. Racial minorities tend to suffer more from obesity and diabetes in general. Diabetes is the seventh leading cause of death, and it costs us a ton of money. I mean, look, $327 billion just of treating diagnosed diabetes in 1 year. In 1 year, one diagnosed, that's known, people with known diabetes in 1 year. The cost, healthcare. We got to do something. Okay, diabetics in general pay 2.3 times more than for their healthcare than a non-diabetic person. Okay, so why are insulin prices so high? What are the insulin prices? I found an excellent article here on singlecare.com. Let's first take a look at the cost of insulin. Okay, it is ridiculous. So here's a chart with some various types of insulin. This column is the per vial or per bottle cost. This is a monthly cost. An average diabetic payer, an average person who needs this medication pays. So, this is only 1 month. So when we're talking about Tresiba down here, we're talking about $15,000 a year for one medication for one disease, and of course that doesn't include testing supplies like strips, needles, your meters, and all that stuff. Okay, so up to $15,000 a year. But why is it so high? In the case of 3 years, one type of insulin increased by 600%. So, whereas it maybe, for example, if it was $100 before, it's now $693. How could it increase in price that much in a couple years? In 2014 alone, the price increased by 30%, whereas inflation only rose in that same time by 8.3%. So the prices grow exponentially, not proportionally. So how much does it actually take to? So we talk about it's expensive drug. We have more of a need for it these days. So it costs more to make. How much does it cost to make? And I want everybody to just think of a number in your head. Okay? Now you saw what they're charging here, as low as $100 a unit, as high as about $500. How much do you think it costs them to make that? Are you ready for this? It costs as little as $2.28 and as high as $6. So even if it at the $6 value, even if you're selling the cheapest insulin, which is Solastar here, it costs you $6. So it costs you $6, and you're charging $101. So you're making a profit of $95 per bottle. Can you think of any other venture where you invest $6 and you make $100? What industries have that kind of profit margin? Only the diamond industry, which is ridiculous also, comes to mind. I mean, when is enough enough? And and you take a look at the stocks of these companies, they're not hurting, okay? The stocks, the revenue, their value, their profits, they break record after record after record after record. It's just never fucking enough. They can never make enough money. Now, the article, attempts to explain why this has happened. We talked about inflation. It goes into a lot of detail about how you can get around some of these prices with your insurance. Sometimes they have these rebate programs and things. They're not the best solution because you have to fill out paperwork and jump through loopholes. This is saying, your application could take a couple months. Well, I hope you're not dead by then. I hope you can afford insulin until that kicks in. People on Medicare may not be eligible. Some of these programs, your employers have to opt into this program. which is an argument against why we should have our health insurance directly tied to our employment, but that's a whole nother issue. One company came out and said, oh, we'll just sell it at half the price, $137. Well, thank you, I guess. Thanks for throwing us a bone there. Even if it takes you $6 to make, at least you're only making $130 now in profit. So check this article out. All these articles I'll put in the description, by the way. So a result of uncontrolled diabetes is something called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a life-threatening condition. If you go to the hospital for DKA, there's a 10% chance you're going to die. Okay. DKA is extremely expensive, up to, what does it say here? Well, on average, about $30,000 per admission, up to close to $300,000 if your case is particularly bad. And about 1 in 5 people will in this particular study, DKA happened more than once to 48 out of 265 people. So this is not just a one-time thing for a lot of people. And okay, so when we try to figure out why they went into DKA, a lot of people didn't give a reason for stopping to take their insulin, but 27% reported lack of money to buy insulin, and 5% reported stretching insulin, which I'll talk about. Prices doubled from 2012 to 2016. DKA is more than a quarter of all the money that we spend for type 1 diabetes. A quarter of that is DKA. Okay, so let's put all of that together, and I will give you my perspective, again, as a registered nurse in this country. There are a few different types of diabetes. There's type 2, which is the one that's associated with poor diet, lack of exercise, obesity. And I'll come back to them, okay? There's also type 1, and type 1 is where at some point in your childhood, your immune system decided that it does not like your pancreas and has attacked and destroyed it, okay? These people need insulin. Your pancreas needs insulin, it makes insulin. Your body needs insulin. All the cells in your body uses insulin to bring in energy to do the things that it needs to do. You need insulin. This is not something that you can fix with a pill or something like that, okay? They need insulin to survive. And they will be on insulin for the rest of their life. There's also gestational diabetes, which is where a woman's body is so stressed and there's so many changes going on that she has trouble regulating her blood sugar. So she may need insulin too, temporarily. So, first of all, aside from that 90 to 95%, Matt Gaetz just said to the type 1 diabetes, the gestational diabetes, that 5 to 10%, fuck you. I don't care if your insulin is $1,000 fucking dollars. I don't care if you don't get enough. I don't care. These pharmaceutical companies have a profit to maintain, and you should be mad at the type 2s, the fat people who won't help themselves. That's what he said. That's what he said. Even if we said, hey, it's all because of the fat people, you just doomed the type 1s and some of the gestationals. That is immoral. It's either deeply ignorant and or immoral, but it's at least ignorant. This is the height of ignorance to forsake 5 to 10%. So let's get to the type 2s. Again, the type 2s are the ones that are associated with bigger weight or the higher weight. So what we do is this is the kind. What happens in type 2 is that your cells become resistant to the insulin. You have some insulin. Either you don't make enough or your cells don't want to use it for whatever reason. There are many ways we can treat this. There are pills that you can take that will either, raise or lower your blood sugar or increase how much insulin. There's all kinds of pills you can take. Okay, a lot of times they're on insulin too, though. Every patient is different, okay? Kind of like what we talked about in the last video. You can't especially in healthcare, you can't have a one shoe fits all mentality. Okay. So if a type 2 comes to us, or maybe they don't even know they're a type 2 yet, we kind of see it coming in best case scenario. Sometimes you just end up in the hospital with diabetic ketoacidosis, and that's how we find out. But if you go to your doctor every year, do your checkup, you do your blood work, you do everything you're supposed to do, maybe we'll see a blood sugar that's kind of creeping up and getting to a level where we think this isn't a normal level. It's like it's not a dangerous level, but this is not a normal level. We'll say to you, hey, you could have type 2 diabetes. What we're going to do is we suggest maybe you could lose some weight. You can change your diet, eat less sugars, less carbohydrates, and maybe get some exercise. Lifestyle changes are always our first response to new diseases, okay? But they're not always successful. They're not always successful for another reason, for a myriad of reasons. Maybe they don't actually know what's healthy. Maybe they have this really... There's a lot of misinformation about what is healthy. Like, just on the internet, watching videos or seeing commercials or on Facebook or any kind of social media, it is amazing the advertisements that are out there that they're trying to sell a product as healthy, and there's nothing healthy about it, okay? So, what we would try to do is we would try to educate. We try to say, hey, this is your blood sugar is high, so you need to decrease how much sugar you eat, and that could be carbohydrates, bread, or it could be processed sugars like candy and stuff like that. So we can show, we can kind of teach that sort of thing, and we can teach them how to use nutrition labels, and we can teach them to proper portion control. Like, hey, weigh your foods, look at the nutrition label, and calculate your intake based on the portion. A whole box of cereal is not a serving. A lot of people don't know that. They don't know how to read nutrition labels. But even if this person is the perfect patient, even if they have perfect information, they can go home and we'll say, try these things and we'll see you at your next checkup. They can come back the next year, and even if they did everything, they could still fail in their goal of achieving and lowering their blood sugar. Lifestyle changes is not a magic solution. It's not a magic wand, okay? That patient could be the perfect patient and still fail controlling their blood sugar, okay? Because type 2 diabetes, as I've said at least a couple of times, is associated with obesity, lack of exercise, poor diet. Those are risk factors, okay? You can get rid of sometimes you can get rid of the risk factors and still get the disease. So this notion that, they just need to lose weight is bullshit. Every nurse will tell you, there are skinny ass people out there that are diabetics, and there are fat ass people who are not diabetics, okay? So your weight has an association, but it's not a sure thing, okay? And even if we sent that patient home, we said, hey, this is your blood sugar, try these things, try these lifestyle things. Even if they went home and they said, fuck the doctor, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to keep eating my McDonald's or whatever. If they came back the next year, their weight was increased, they said they didn't really try, and their sugar was higher, it doesn't mean that we just kick them out the door. It doesn't mean that we don't treat them. We still say, okay, well, the lifestyle modifications, for whatever reason, and we'll try to find that reason and correct that, but they have failed. Therefore, now we're going to start medication, okay? Because we don't want to let this spiral out of control. Now we're going to start medication, okay? Can you imagine if you went to the doctor the next year and you say, well, I'm 10 more pounds and I haven't really watched what I eat. Could you imagine say, well, get out of my office, get out, and come back when you're actually trying. We don't do that, okay? We don't do that in medicine. But that's kind of what Matt Gaetz is saying. Fuck all the type 1s and the gestational diabetics, and fuck all the type 2s, either because they failed, they didn't know any better, they were healthy food is expensive. Okay, it's expensive and it takes time to cook. If you're poor or you're like a single parent with a couple kids and a job, may not have time to cook a healthy meal all the time. Especially when it's so easy when you're working to just stop by McDonald's in 5 minutes, you can get your lunch and go on. People do not always have the resources to do what they should be doing, okay? And this is what I was talking about, how people kind of stretch their insulin. They'll try to ration it out. They'll say, well, I don't get paid until next Friday, and I'm almost out of insulin, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of as much insulin as I should until I can get my paycheck and pay for that. And sometimes what happens is that people come to the hospital. Again, ask a nurse. People come to the fucking hospital with DKA all the time. Sky-high blood sugars all the time. Okay? It happens every day. In every ER, every day. And I showed you the statistics. What was it? 27% of people, I guess 32% combined, said that they didn't take their insulin as instructed by the doctor because of costs. And now so we're talking about costs, we're talking about how much we pay for medicine, but then these people show up in the emergency room and they have to go to the ICU or something, and it costs tens and tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have been prevented if we just paid for somebody's fucking insulin. And I don't think that asking these companies, maybe you should only get $30 profit off of a bottle, and they just want to whine and cry. I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it when people are dying in the streets or coming to the hospital and dying, or maybe they don't die. Just because somebody doesn't die doesn't mean that they didn't suffer, that they didn't experience loss, whether that was wage loss, their job loss, loss of whatever you may lose while you're in the hospital. And it's a traumatic experience if we got to jam a tube down your throat because your body is going crazy from the high blood sugar. Okay, the cost of hospital resources, all those sterile things that we use, all those gloves that we use, all those money we pay the nurses, the fact it's going to cost our healthcare system, like it's already burdened and overburdened. And how many times have you heard a nurse say that they're burnt out? Part of it is because we've got these people coming to ED with diabetic ketoacidosis because they can't afford a fucking insulin because their insurance company wants to say, well, you got to meet your $5,000 copay first, or we'll only charge you $130 a bottle. Okay. Well, if you're Matt Gaetz and your dad was a politician and you're doing okay, maybe $130 a month isn't that big of a deal. But if you're out here making $7.25 or $10 or $20 or $25 trying to raise a family, that is a big fucking deal, okay? For one medicine, for one disease, for one person. And we think, everybody said, the pharmaceutical companies, they just charge whatever they want to, because it's like, what are you going to do? Not buy it or die? You're going to buy it. We can charge whatever we want to. And then we go to our politicians and we say, hey, can you do something about this? Like they're gouging us, like they're holding our lives hostage. Like, we don't care if they make a profit. Just, my God, can we make it a little more, can we make this one medicine a little more affordable? And Matt Gaetz said no. Fuck you guys. Fuck the type 1s and the gestational diabetics that have nothing to do with this. And fuck the type 2s because you can't be motivated to lose weight. And even if you did, it wouldn't necessarily matter at all. Fuck the nurses for being overworked. Fuck the healthcare system for being overstrained. I'm just going to vote no. So, I mean, in politics sometimes there are differences in values and differences of opinions, and that's the core of politics. a conflict in the values, a conflict in what we should prioritize. That's the purest form of politics. And we have a problem. How should we address that? But then you wonder why the opinion of our Congress and our politicians is so low. It's because you have Matt Gaetz, who just can't be bothered for the senior citizens on Medicare, or the single mom, or the non-rich person. He couldn't be cared. It's all about them corporate profits. Probably because they donate to his campaign, but that's a whole nother issue. I hope I was able to clear some things up for you. If you have a different perspective, if you have a different opinion, you're always welcome. I'm going to put the links to all my resources in the comments or in the description. Comment away, and